pops and formed a $1 billion paving contracting company by buying up a bunch of small paving companies. So they're the largest, they're a multi-billion dollar company. Same thing Wayne Huizenga did with waste management. He was a garbage collector, got a job as managing, said this was a good business, started said, look, we will buy these mom and pops out, and he created. So now we have 2 big garbage companies. But when I was a kid, every city had their own garbage company, right? Today you got Waste Management, Brown and Ferris, right? But that's what APEC had done. So APEC said, when he called them up, they said, oh, well, we bid that job last year for $323,000. And Bill said, would you do it for me for that? They said, sure. So he turns in a bid to the government, $416,700. Thinking, he told Sean, he said, I was sitting in my chair going, look, this is exactly what these guys were telling me. I want to make 100 grand. So that's where the number came from. I want to make 100 grand. He figured he could negotiate the guy down a few thousand, right? He gets a phone call from the government. Now, it was advertised as a 1 to 250. So it was advertised 100K to 250K. And that's, remember, this guy said they didn't have enough money. I bid it last year, but they didn't have enough money. So the government tells him, Bill, you're the only bidder here, but your price is too high. Now, something you're going to hear about at the end of the day is the $100,000 letter, if you haven't heard about it before. So back in 2003, I had somebody tell me my price was too high. It took me 25 years to figure out how to write it, but I wrote what became known as the $100,000 letter. In fact, if you go to Google and you type in the $100,000 letter, $100,000, it takes you right to our page, right? It's become a rather famous letter. So it explains why our price is high, right? So he says, should we send him the $100,000 letter? I said, yeah, it wouldn't hurt. So we send Yancey Davis, the contracting officer, a version of the $100,000 letter. This had never happened before. Now, up to that point, a couple of years ago, when we did this, the $100,000 letter was all about me getting a high-priced contract. This was the first time where the government took the letter, went back to their estimating team and said, hey, do we have money? Did we cover all of this in our estimate? And the estimator said, probably not. Here. And they gave him $416,700. They gave him additional money. So he calls up Bill and says, hey, Bill, I have the money, I can negotiate with you, but you can't make more than 10%. All of a sudden, Bill goes, in his mind, holy shit. He just dropped from 90 grand to 100 grand, down to, in his mind, 32,000 profit. That's what he's thinking. So he calls me up and says, man, they want to negotiate. Can you help me write a letter? I said, we're not going to write a letter. You call Yancey Davis back and ask him if we, because that week I was doing a workshop, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This was a Monday. And the reason was I had a Jewish guy, and he has his Sabbath, so he couldn't be here on Friday. So I said, well, I'll do this workshop Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I told him, I said, call Yancey Davis, ask him if we can negotiate at 10 o'clock Friday morning. You'll bring your consulting estimator in on the phone call. So Bill sets it all up. Calls him back and says, we're on. I said, great, I want you to have 3 things on your desk. You have the telephone, you have a recording device, and a roll of duct tape. And Bill goes, I get the recording device, I get the phone, what's the duct tape for? I said, in every conversation that I have with the government when I'm in negotiations, there comes a certain point in the conversation where silence is deafening. It's so deafening that people can't help but to say something. So it's really important that if you feel the urge to say something, when there's silence on the phone, you put the duct tape over your mouth. Because I'm going to tell you something, Bill. I'll get you the contract for $416,700. But if you screw this up, I'm kicking you out of my program, I'm keeping your 10 grand, and screw you. Because I know you need the money. So he agreed, right? So I said, well, any other concerns? He said, well, the guy wants to be sure it gets done before winter weather sets in because they shut down the asphalt plants. And what was the other concern that he had? Yeah, I think that was it. And so his other concern, Bill's concern was that the government already knew, because they had bid last year, what this number was. So he was afraid that, because they told me he could only make 10%. So I said, well, you just listen carefully how I address your fears. So I said, all I want you to do is you get everybody on the phone, and then you tell Nancy Davis, hey, listen, I brought my consulting estimator, he's an expert at this, into the conversation to handle negotiation because he does this professionally, much better than I do. And then you keep your mouth shut. Now, if I ask you a specific question, then you answer it, but you answer it succinctly. If I want you to elaborate, then you explain a little bit more, but keep it short and simple. But I may not ask you anything, but if I do, I want you to keep it short and sweet. We have an understanding. Yes. Okay, great. Phone rings. Mr. Davis, I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to negotiate this contract. So here's the script that I was using. I'm just going to give it to you. You figure out if you want to put notes on it. And the first thing I said to him is, I said, you know, I appreciate, I love the National Park Service is actually my favorite agency. This is the absolute truth. It's my favorite agency to work for. I've done a lot of work in Mississippi. I've done a lot of highway paving projects. And Bill's Service Disabled Veterans got years of experience with doing work for the government, but not construction. And my expertise is construction, so I handle that part for Bill. That's why I'm on the phone conversation. I think everybody knows that the actual cost of the 1-inch overlay is about $325,000. Now, what did I just do with Bill's fear?
Lay it out.
It's gone, right? Because I just put it right up front. Bill told me, I'm afraid they already know this 320. So I just, look, the way to face a fear is to put it right up front, make it go away, right? I think everybody knows that the actual cost of the 1-inch overlay is about $325,000. So if I use that as a base and I add to it extended overhead costs, the cost of procuring the contract, because Bill's got to bid several projects before he gets one, the extended overhead, he's got to stay in business, so he's got overhead costs. He's got to project manage the project. He's got submittals. He's got to comply with the Davis-Bacon Act, certified payroll reports, daily reports. He's got to document the project. He's got to provide the insurance, the bonds. And so when you add all of that, that's another $50,000 to $60,000, about $385,000. Now, you did tell Bill that he could make 10%. Is that right? And there was this, well, yeah. Well, now if I add 10% to that, that comes up to $425,000. Can you get more money? And there was this sputter. Well, I had to go get more money to come up with a 416.7. No, I can't get any more money. Oh, okay, well, that's understandable. Well, let's see. So if I get this right, if Bill were able to complete the project before winter weather sets in, comply with all the requirements of the contracts, deliver a product that meets or exceeds your expectations, the quality requirements of the contract, completes it before winter weather sets in, provides you with certified payroll reports, proper project management, documentation, and can do all of that for only $416,700, Bill would be doing you a big favor. Is that right? I mean, you'd be able to award it now and get this off your desk and not worry about it, and you could go on to other things. Is that right? He goes, well, yeah. I said, okay, well, before we commit to doing this, are you going to be there for about an hour? And he said, yes. I said, okay, well, either Bill or I will get back with you within an hour. Before I commit to this, I want to be sure that our team is all set up and we're ready to go on this, so that, because I wouldn't want to take a contract that we couldn't meet or exceed your expectations. So we'll be back with you in an hour. I really appreciate you taking the phone call. Thank you very much. We'll be back with you shortly. So I hang up. Of course, immediately the phone rings. It's Bill. He's going, that was too freaking easy. I said, Bill, that was 35 years of expertise on exactly who had the problem, right? So it's approaching September 30. The money's going to run out. He's got one bidder only. He's got a big problem. He's got the money. All we need to do is give him justification and award a full price contract. Let's face it, unless you're generating money out of what you learned from this workshop, unless you can make a lot of money out of what you learned here, you're wasting your time. Mm-hmm. So there's people out there that they question whether this can be really true. What we deliver here is so different than anything that anybody else has. Can it really be true? So they tell me I'm borderline. I don't know whether to make the decision. So if somebody asked you, said, hey, should I be doing this or not? What would you tell them?
If you're at all interested in dealing with the federal government and you care about results,
Results is
then
big, huh?
Then it's the way to go. Otherwise, you could get discouraged really quick.
If somebody was trying to decide, like you were at one time, you're doing all this due diligence, but you just can't quite decide whether you should come or not, what would you tell them?
I'd tell him check out Doug's deal. I mean, I think he's got a valid opportunity to get you into the federal business and give it a shot.
Now, last thing I'm going to ask each of you one at a time. George, somebody's trying to decide whether they should come here or not, okay? People struggle with that. What would you tell them?
I would recommend them. Tell them that the information that we received here in the last 3 days is very valuable. It's great.
Jessica, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I'd recommend it, and I think different from George is that I know that I'm going to use certain tools and apply it to other aspects of our company, not just the federal market, which
Right.
it opens your eyes, after you've been in the industry for a long time and you're used to doing certain things certain ways, you kind of get stuck sometimes, and I think that that's what I'm taking the most out of it is creativity, period. So.
Okay, great. And Dawn, how about you?
I would agree, yes. I would recommend it. Thinking outside the box and the creativity, I think, is... And it wasn't like, oh, it's so creative that it's, not doable because it's not legal or whatever. It's
Right.
not like that. It's just creative, it's, I guess, right brain thinking versus left brain.
Yeah, creative thinking. Okay, Brett, what's your take on it? What would you tell somebody?
I mean, I would definitely say yes. It changes your mindset about, the way about going about business. It's completely different than sort of what I'm used to right now. And so the fact that it's changed my mindset and it's something that I get to go at a completely different way, that actually seems a lot more win-win situation rather than an adversarial.
Somebody's wondering whether or not they should come. What are you going to tell them, Mike?
Sure. You're going to learn things here that you won't learn anywhere else.
Okay.
And you could have all the college, you could have 20-some years experience, and we're here to testify we're learning some new things.
Yeah.
Did it help you in your business?
Yeah. well,
Increase revenues and margins?
I think so.
Amber, there are probably going to be other people that are struggling with the government construction business or construction business in general. And they're going to run across, they're going to find out that there's one guy out there that claims to be an expert, and they're going to struggle with this idea, it's a scam. If they were right there on that camera, what would you tell them about your experience here in the last 3 days? Now, you've already told us, you told Mom you thought this was a scam before you got here, right? What would you tell them?
It's not a scam. I thought it was. I'm very skeptical, and everything he said is very helpful, and it's not a scam.
You got a game plan now? You
Yes.
know what you're going to do
Yep,
when you go
yep,
back
game
Monday?
plan. Mhm.
Barb, same question. What would you tell somebody who's borderline, they're not sure whether they should come or not?
I think you should come. It's good, especially if you have people that you're not sure if they know what they're doing. Bring them, and they can learn, and then you'll have 3 times the business because it's easier to do with 3 people than just 1 person.
David, Mom and your sister were going to come here and leave you home.
Yes, they were.
All right. So you've been here for 3 days. Somebody's wondering whether or not they should come to this. What would you tell them?
It's a no-brainer. Just with this Fed Biz Ops, with the Fed Biz Ops alone, my mom wanted me to search that site and look for work, and it's like a maze, I'm never gonna get through that. I'm thinking, I hate this. This is awful. I gotta go through this every day, and I gotta go through a million different things, and maybe find one that we can bid on, and then you see this, and everything's set up perfect, and it's worth it just for this. Just for this, it makes me wanna pursue these jobs instead of like a hassle going on Fed Biz Ops. This is
You can say it. That's right.
and yes, this is great. It's worth it. It's a no-brainer. It's not a question. It's a no-brainer.
I guarantee you, 100% promise you, that you will never have a problem on a federal construction contract that I haven't already had and come up with a brilliant solution for. Do this, this, and this. I fired a girl, Nora Booth. She'd been with me for 5 years. One of our business processes for the administrator was that before you turn in a bid, the last thing you do before you submit a bid is you verify the number of amendments. Because if you miss an amendment, it's fatal. Now, there's an exception to that rule, and that's only if the amendment would be immaterial to the amount of the bid. But she missed an amendment on a bid after being there 5 years. It cost me 200 grand because I didn't get the job, even though I was low bidder. And I said, you're fired, because I can't risk that might happen again. You took your focus off. So what happened when the new girl came in, Mel? I said, the reason you're here is because I fired the other girl. Here's why. You understand the single most important thing you have is when you turn in my bid to the government that you verify the number of amendments. And guess what? That girl never missed an amendment, right? So that's a process, okay? So people in process. So we think of this as the funnel. Now, later on in the late 90s, there's a third factor that came into play, which we use today, and that's something called technology, okay? And that's what Bid Tracker came out of. We started developing technologies. But basic principles of business is you have people following processes. If you have a problem in your business, it's either that somebody didn't follow the process, like Nora Booth, she didn't verify amendments, or in which case you have to make a decision. The people didn't follow the process. I can either retrain the people, or I fire them and get somebody else that's going to follow the process. Understand that, okay? Or the process is right, okay, we got the wrong person. Okay? But you can track almost every problem that you have in business down to people. If it's a process problem, then you correct the process. If it's a people problem, you either retrain or replace them. Okay? Now, most people think of this as a business funnel, and what do they say comes out of the bottom of the funnel? What's supposed to come out of this? Okay? Most people think of this. What we're going to do right now is you go ahead and draw that little diagram up there and then put a big X through this. This whole thing is not about money. Now, don't get me wrong. Cash is the lifeblood of a business. You can't operate it. If you don't have a profit, at the end of the day, then shame on you. You shouldn't be in business. But the purpose of the business funnel, the purpose of business, if you go down, this is a big problem. You go down the street, just any stranger, you say, what's the purpose of business? What are they going to tell you? To make money, right? That's a big problem. Let me tell you why it's a big problem. The minute you have a conversation with me, or you have a conversation, you go, well, Doug's got a business, I got a business, it's all about money. Well, we're going to have a struggle there because Doug's in business to make money, I'm in business to make. So you got this natural barrier there. I break the barrier because that's not the purpose of business. Now, interestingly, did you have more than one business card?
Multiple.
You got multiple ones? Great. We're going to hand them out because we're going to go back to your business fundamental and give one. Okay, got one. Okay, so we're going to look at the real purpose of business. Okay. Now, go to your business fundamental page. Okay, if that's where we're at. Now, there's 3 parts to the real purpose of business. There's 3 parts. Part A, B, and C. Part A is the real purpose of business to find or create a customer or client who has a need or desire for a product or service that you can provide and meet or exceed their level of expectation. Define or create a customer or client who has a need or desire for a product or service that you can provide and meet or exceed their level of expectation. Now, part B is they must have the money to trade for the product or service. B is they must have the money to trade for the product or service. And C is they must be willing to part with the money in exchange for the product service. Not only have to have the money, but they have to actually pull out of their pocket and be willing to pay it. Victor, have you already been paid 100% of every contract that you went into that people agreed to pay you for doing construction services? Have you always been paid 100% of what the agreements were on every project?
No, I've been paid more.
Well, you've only done federal contracts, right?
That's it.
Okay, all right, but have you always been paid from every customer 100%? Have you always been paid from every customer 100%? Okay, now, early in my career, I had a guy go bankrupt on me. Got me for 20 grand, okay? And I didn't know what a UCC1 form is. If you don't know what a UCC1 form is, just write it up write it on your resource page, UCC1 form. Google it, read about it. If you buy a car, you get a title when you pay for it. When you buy a house, you get a title for your property. If you sell a telephone system, where's the title for it? You put the telephone system in the guy's business. Oh, we rent this warehouse, so I pay somebody and I lease it. There is no title on it. So UCC1 form is the state enables you to create a title. So if I'm in the business of selling phone systems and I want to lease it to you until it's paid for, it's still mine. I got a title on it. So I go get a UCC1 form. It used to be $5, and I file it with the state saying this is a title on that equipment. That way, if the guy doesn't pay for it, I can go in and repossess it. The building owner can't say, no, that's tied into my building. I own the building, so I own the phone system. He said, no, I got a title on it. I'm here to repossess it. You better give it to me. I'm going to get a lawyer and sue you for trying to steal my property, right? But if you don't, see, early in my career, I was selling mobile home air conditioners, and I didn't get a UCC1 form. And the mobile home dealer was selling it with the mobile homes, got into me for a truckload, and then filed bankruptcy. And I couldn't go repossess them because the title company that had the mobile home tied the title of the air conditioner into the paperwork. And I got screwed for 20 grand. And that's one of the things that drove me into federal contracting, because if I walk down the street in the summertime here in Texas and knock on the door, hey, do you want a swimming pool? Everybody's going to say, yeah, I'd love to have a swimming pool. But there's going to be a certain percentage that go, well, I really don't have the money. And then there's a percentage that have the money, but when it comes time to pay, they say, all of a sudden it's coming out of their pocket, and they're thinking my vacation, or my wife's sick now, I got a doctor bill, or kids' college education fund, or my retirement, and so they think all these reasons why not to pay you, right? You've had that done to you, right? And so the beauty of federal contracting was that they don't issue the contract unless the money's been appropriated. It's funded, right? So B, you don't have to worry about. And C, it's stuck on somebody's desk, and the only way they can get it off their frickin' desk is to pay you. So the government's paying somebody to give you the money. That's why he's sitting here going like, once I got into federal contracting, if you don't have to worry about B and C, can you understand why if I only have to worry about A, my life is a whole lot better? Right? So, I'm all over this. This government contracting stuff's really good. And so I got really good at doing government contracts. I became the most aggressive sumbitch you ever saw when it came to finding, getting, negotiating, and completing federal contracts, because it was a huge reward level. I never had to worry about the money or getting paid for it, right? They couldn't get it off their desk until I got my money. They're stuck with it. They're trying to get it off their desk, because as fast as they get it off their desk, what's right behind it? There's some more, right? So you're doing them a big favor if you help them get that. I was doing Yancey Davis a huge favor by negotiating that contract, getting it off his desk, getting that 1-inch overlay done by a professional expert contractor before winter weather sets in, because if it doesn't get done this year, what happens over the winter? In Mississippi, you get freeze-thaw cycles, and they might need 1.5 inches or 2 inches next year. Might cost them more money. So it's important we get this done. And Bill pocketed $123,000. Okay. Let's see. All right. So the whole purpose of this funnel is to find and create to create the most value in other people's lives and businesses. That's the purpose of your business, right? Now, there's money and speed. It's the application of resources plus time to create the most value. Now, a little bit later, we're going to talk about value. And one of the things, one of the business fundamentals. So this was a business fundamental. Oh, by the way, once you find or create a customer or client and you make a deal and you get paid for it, once you have a customer or client, now you have a new purpose. So that's the real purpose of business. But once you have a customer or client, you have a new purpose. So I want to write down the new purpose. Once you have a customer or client.
Who are the GC experts? Doug Reitmeyer?
You cannot make a mistake in this business that I can't help you fix. I don't care if your bid's too low, too high. I'm going to teach you how to get out of contract. I'm going to teach you how to change your bid number between the time you bid a job and the time it gets awarded.
Sean Reitmeyer.
We all know it's a pain in the ass to fill out a timesheet every week, but I'm going to tell you how this is going to make you a whole bunch of money.
Between them, over 50 years of government construction, 1,000 contracts, and over $1 billion in revenue. The Reitmeyers have taught their system to companies who have earned over $200 million in the past year. They don't just tell you how to get government contracts, they work with you personally to increase your revenue and profit margin.
I would say if you're interested in doing federal contracts, this is the workshop.
This is such a huge opportunity that we've just gone through.
I think the information is invaluable. Very excited to put it into practice.
I look at you as a role model and guru.
I'm convinced you're the expert.
Get out of here because it'll change your life more than one way, more than 10 ways.
You really think we're going to learn anything in Austin? You will, I promise. Dollar investment and turn it into $200,000 to $2 million over the next 5 or 10 years, or to give them a recurring revenue stream. Strategic application of superior knowledge. What you're getting here in this workshop is superior knowledge. We take your knowledge to a whole new level, and then we show you how to strategically apply that in the marketplace. So when I got a phone call from Joe Call saying, hey, look, I'm looking at a project here, it's 400 miles away, but in the spec it says that you have to have an office within 50 miles. You can't bid the job unless you have an office within 50 miles. He's 400 miles away. It was replacing a chiller on a federal project. And he called me up, he says, well, does this mean I can't bid the job? I said, look, it's just like people, what's everybody going to do? Well, if I'm not within 50 miles, I can't bid the job. I said, you're changing out a chiller. What's a non-competing subcontractor that everybody bidding that job is going to use? A non-competing subcontractor on a chiller change out that anybody bidding that job is going to use. You know, what subcontractor am I, if I've got a contract to pull an old chiller out and put a new one in, what subcontractors am I going to have? I'm going to have an electrician, right? I'm going to have an insulator, right? I might be a mechanical guy, but mechanical guys typically sub the insulation and they'll sub the electrical, right? So I can find a non-competing sub and call the guy up and say, look, I'd like to have an office in your area. So I find a non-competing sub that's not going to bid the job as a prime, right? And say, I'm up here in Syracuse or Buffalo, New York, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to use your address as on my letterhead. I don't care if it's a closet, coat closet, or the bathroom, or if you got a spare, desk, right, cubicle. Put my name on it, and I'll do the same up here. So you have an office here in Buffalo, and if I get a job down there, I'll get a Google phone number that'll be in your local area code and number, but it'll come through to my cell phone, so I'll know that it's coming from that area, and I'll answer it. But I need to have an office in that area to go after this job, and if I get the job, I'll turn over the installation to you. Even if your bid's $500 higher, as long as your bid's reasonable, even if it's $500 higher than the next guy, I'll just give you the job. If you'll let me share offices with you, or let me put on my letterhead, and you can put on your website that you have an office up here in Buffalo, and I'll put on my website that I have an office down there. And if anybody asks, we have a reciprocal agreement, so that I got a presence down there. Now you can bid the job, and it costs zero, right? And I tell the guy, look, if you see any projects down here, particularly like change house or anything that need installation, if it's a government job, I'm the guy that'll go get the project for you. And hey, as long as your price is reasonable, even if it's $500 more than the next guy, I'll give you the job, right? And you see how I can take that knowledge, a strategic application of a superior knowledge, and go get cash in the bank, okay? I've done that numerous times. So basically what you want to do is create a knowledge gap between you and the other guys. So they come up and they go, oh, I can't bid that job, but you know how to cross the bridge and get to the other side and put the money in the bank, okay? So knowledge is why you are here. I love seeing the government invest money in their infrastructure and people profit from it, okay? So I have a passion for that. Because one of the things I want to fix a little vocabulary here for you. So we'll go to business fundamentals and just jot this down. Never talk about cost. Always talk about investment. Nobody likes to buy things, but everybody likes to invest in things, right? Understand that our government, our federal government, when they do a renovation on a building, just like if you add a swimming pool to your backyard, do your taxes go up? Does the value of your home increase? The federal government, every time they spend a construction dollar, in their books, their record-keeping system, they say we have increased the value of the country. A lot of people don't realize this. The beautiful thing of the Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal, how he saved the country, was he went to Congress and he said, for the first time, I want you to give me the right to print money without gold backing and trade the printed money for infrastructure. If you'll let me print money instead of gold that sits over at Fort Knox, we're going to build a dam that's going to create a lake and give us electricity. It'll be worth more than gold. And in fact, Hoover Boulder Dam at the time cost $48.5 million, and you couldn't be replaced for $2 billion today. And it's returned millions of dollars in revenue every year by the water resource, Lake Mead, that is created. The last time I saw, they ran a 25-foot diameter pipe from Lake Mead into Las Vegas to service those tens of thousands of hotel rooms there, right? I think there's 4,500 rooms in just one hotel. I mean, some massive number of hotel rooms there are in Las Vegas, right? It's got to have a lot of water. But that was a result of the Franklin Delano Roosevelt saying, look, we don't need gold to back this. We need infrastructure to back it. It's more valuable than gold, right? And they put in the books there, hey, we invested $48.5 million. The country's worth now $2 billion more. We don't say that. We just say we've invested 48.5. But if they give you more money on a contract, do you understand that on their books they increase the value more? Carlos, I just got back from Skagway, Alaska, where we put a 3-ton air conditioner in a 1,000 square foot museum. A 3-ton air conditioner, no heating, just air conditioning. $107,000. $107,000 to put a 3-ton air conditioner in a museum. Okay?
It's in Alaska, probably.
It's a remote area. Yeah, it costs $60,000. Here, I'd do it for $5. Up there, it costs $60. We had to have the duct fabricated in Anchorage, pay a guy $3,500 to take it 840 miles into Canada, come back, had to pay the border guards $500 bribe to get it to go through, right? And had to pay a team of guys to fly in there, so paid $12,000 for the installation, $11,000 for the duct work, $15,000 for the computer room air conditioner type to comply with the humidity and dehumidification controls requirements, hot gas reheat and so forth. But still, you made plenty of money on it, and he didn't have to do anything except call me up and say, hey, I'll split the money with you if you can figure out how to make money in Alaska, which I knew how to do that, right? How could I be the most productive with my time? Remember, the single most valuable thing I have after my health is my time. People spend hours trying to find projects every day. I reduce that to less than 5 minutes. At the end of tomorrow, when Sean shows you the technology and how we use that technology, I want you to wake up every morning and the first thing you do is spend 5 minutes doing what I did every day for 5 minutes. Because in 5 minutes, you can completely discover everything that the government's spending money on in the way of construction for any given single day up to 30 days into the future. So you pick a day, you spend 5 minutes, and you'll see the golden landscape. So it's kind of like if you looked at, you look down at the Pacific Ocean at night, right, from a satellite, and it's all black except for the ships that are lit, right? So you just see these little light things there. So there's all this darkness out there, but you see the lights. Now you look at those lights and go, in less than 3 seconds, you can tell by looking at the light, you can scan that line, and your brain can pick up and go, oh, this one I'd be the only bidder, okay? Now, that's one of the things you want to learn how to do, is figure out how you're going to be the only bidder. And I'll give you all the criteria and how I use that to get these high profit jobs, okay? How do you find good subs? This is Victor's big problem. How can I do these jobs, right? So remember, multiple places. I would say never use Craigslist until I got a job at Cannon Air Force Base. And when you go to Google Earth and you look at where Cannon Air Force Base, it's in the middle of nowhere, right? Little tiny town, Clovis, New Mexico. Everything else is a long ways away. I don't know what the population goes, maybe 10,000. But guess what? Craigslist, Clovis, New Mexico, everybody looks at it every day. So when I put in an ad in Clovis, I'm looking for a mechanic that can do this, this, and this. Boom. They tell me the best mechanics in town. They talk, right? Guy calls me up. I'm a mechanic. I've got to pass on the flight line out there, right? Because I've got to do an aircraft maintenance assembly deal. Boom. But the ways to find good subcontractors and good contractors are by who is the best in town. Who's going to recommend them? So you called the preacher at the church, that little tiny town up there in Wisconsin, called the boiler guy over here when I needed some boiler work done at the prison not far away, right? I call a major contractor. If I'm looking for a good plumber, who's your go-to guy? If he's too busy, who would be your second best deal, right? So I get his top 2 right-hand guys. Would it be all right if I used your name? Then I'm calling the guy up and saying, hey, Charles over there at XYZ Construction? Everybody, yeah, I do concrete work. And so I don't know how much you're paying him. He says you're the best there is. Is that true? I get into a conversation with him, right? And so you get this, because I know somebody he knows that he likes that gives him business, then I start fitting in the same category, and I fit in with him, right? By carrying that conversation on that way. How do I negotiate with subs? Anybody watch Pawn Stars? Pawn Stars? Did you happen to see where ABC, Good Morning America, George Stephanopoulos, they did a special on the Pawn Stars, and he went to Las Vegas. He said, I want to learn to be a pawn guy. Did you happen to see that episode? No. Okay. So they show George in the back room. Okay, here's how we do pawn stuff, right? They come in. Did you want to sell it or did you want to pawn it, right? How much did you want to sell it for, right? He goes through it. Okay, George, can you do this, right? So now George goes out. First guy comes in, walks up to George. I have this antique book. And George is looking at it going, wow, I want that book. How much do you want for it? Right? No, George says, I don't know, somehow he said, George said, can I buy it from you? And the guy says, yeah. He said, well, would you take whatever it was, $2,500, right? So George kind of had an idea what the thing was worth, and George wanted it. And these guys, the Pawn Star guys are going, what the frick is he doing? Right? The whole idea in the pawn business is that you never give the first number. Okay? That you always say, you want to sell it, you want to pawn it. Oh, how much were you looking to get out of it? Right? Because if in your mind it's a $10,000 item and he says, I'll take $2,000 for it, what's he going to say? Well, that's a little bit more than what I expected to pay. Would you take $1,500? Even if he knows it's worth $10,000. Do you understand the logic behind that? Okay? Now I'm going to show you how this actually works in real life. I've got a project, I think I told you about the mayor up there that walked into the room and told everybody. Bill's got that one figured out. Okay? Yeah, Bill's got that. He did that one with you? Okay. So at Texarkana, I put all these unit heaters up. Now a unit heater is taking a steam coil, turning it into a circle, putting a piece of sheet metal on the top of it, and putting a motor in the middle of it with a propeller on it. So when you turn the thermostat on, that motor comes on, steam goes through the coil, air is pulled through the coil, gets heated and blown down. So you put these all around a ceiling of a warehouse or a building, right? So I had this APC, Armored Personnel Carrier building, where we had to put up 100 unit heaters. They're 2.5 feet diameter. The last thing we had to do was put 5-foot diffusers on it. So there's a lip sticking down about 4 inches around the inside of where that motor is, and then these diffusers get screwed to that lip so it distributes the air out over a 30-foot by 30-foot area 25 feet below, 20 to 25 feet below, and there's 100 of them. So I had to default terminate the sub because he wasn't getting done fast enough, but he had put all the heaters up. So I got with his bond company and said, look, I'm going to finish the job, but you're getting the bill. But the last thing I had to do was put these diffusers up. So I got 100 boxes of these things, and in my mind, I'm thinking, Jesus, how are you even going to get those things up there? I mean, this is like an automobile manufacturing plant, right? The APCs come in one side, they get all torn apart, and when you get to the middle of this 24 acres under one building, that's where the bulk, the Hulk thing is, right? And then it gets all remachined and rebuilt, and they drive it off brand new coming out the other end. And all types of equipment and machinery over this whole acreage, multi-acre building. And so we had all the heaters up, and I'm thinking to myself, if I paid somebody $100 a piece, could I get this done? If I give them $100, that'd be $10,000. That's what's going through my mind. But I keep asking people in town, who would I have do that? And multiple people said, just call Rick over at Rick's Sheet Metal. I mean, at Texarkana Sheet Metal, Rick. So I call Rick, and he shows up. And to this day, I was vivid. Black, beautiful black truck, gold lettering, Texarkana Sheet Metal. Guy comes out, at least 6 foot tall, a lot taller than me, thin, black shirt, black cowboy hat, black jeans. And I mean, I can see him coming out of that truck. Hey, Rick, I really appreciate you coming out here. Let me show you what we got. So we kind of walk in. I say, I got 100 of those. I need these diffusers up there. What do you think is a fair price to do that? And he looks down at me and he says, $3,000. Now where's my number? Right? And I said, oh, well, how about $2,800 and I'll pay you real fast. But I need to have it done in the next 10 days. He says, oh, I can get it done a lot faster. He said, they're all ready to go? I said, yeah. Now, we were working nights because you couldn't work in there with all that equipment going on. So I had this guy, Eddie, would come out at 11 o'clock in the morning. His job was to watch what everybody was doing. He knew exactly what work needed to be done the next night. So when he got there, he was making sure that the areas where we had to work, where our plan was, by the time they would leave at 4 in the afternoon, that they worked with him to clear the area where our guys had to come in at night. That was his job. It was like $10 an hour. It wasn't Davis Bacon. He wasn't doing any trade work. I said, I want you to be here. I want you to watch. I want you to get friends with these people. And you just make sure that when you can see where our stuff's got to be laid out, that they don't have some piece of equipment or machinery that's going to be in our way that prevent us to get up there to finish the steam piping that we're running and the insulation. So the next day, and then I would go back, I would typically go out there in the late afternoon when my guys, they were leaving, my guys were coming up, making sure everybody knows what to do because they're working nights. And then I go back to the hotel room, start bidding jobs, and during the day I'd be bidding jobs while I was staying up there for the week. So the next day I come up there about 4 o'clock and I see Rick's truck there. And so I'm getting out of my car and I can see Rick and another guy coming off of 2 real tall ladders, like 20-foot ladders. And they've put the diffuser on. And as they're coming down the ladder, I'm walking up to them, but everywhere I look, every diffuser I can see is on as I start looking across the building. And so as they're coming down the ladder, I went up, well, how many more do you have to do? And he's looking at me as he's coming down the ladder like, that's the last one. Like, I just got you for $2,800. That's what he's thinking with this big grin, like, that's the last one. And I'm thinking, where in the frick can I overnight you a check? I mean, frick, I mean, I go out there the next day, it's done. I can go home. I don't have to worry about this anymore. That's what's going through my head. And I said, man, that's fantastic. Where can I overnight you a check? He said, just send it. You got my business card. Yeah, shit, man, I'll get you the money on it, no problem. So he's getting in the truck, loading up with his buddy, and I see Eddie come around. I go, I'm going, Eddie, can you believe that? They got all those, I mean, I can't believe it. And he looks at me, what, you think he did all those? And I'm going, what are you talking about? He said, Rick came in here about noon, and everybody went, hey, Rick. Rick used to be the quarterback on the football team in the high school. Everybody here knew it. Hey, Rick, what you know? Oh, I got these diffusers to put up. He said, shit, there was 30 people over here with forklifts and man lifts and equipment. And he says, shit, man, the whole thing, he did 3 of them. He's out there saying, yeah, well, let's see, well, maybe we could get this one there. He's just telling people what to do, and then he and his buddy got up here to do a few of them himself. I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, there's things that people can do in this world that you and I are never going to be able to do, right? I mean, there's no freaking way you'd give me $2,800 and I'd go up there and do every one of those. At $28 a piece, are you shitting me, right? Yeah. Okay? I mean, it's like the mayor coming in saying, you tell them how to divide up the money, I want it done in 3 months. Frick, it's done in 3 months, right? There's people that can do shit you can never do. But you have to have your mind open to that, right? Now, let's talk about by the hour, by the job. Sometimes you find somebody that's really good at what they're doing, but they only work by the hour, say $100 an hour. I had this happen to me. It was Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. It's halfway between, you land in Raleigh, North Carolina to get to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. To get to Camp Lejeune, you drive down 70, and that's the place to get there, right? And we were doing the officers club, and I had to replace the HVAC equipment. The hallway door wasn't big enough for the equipment either to come out of or to go in. So when they built the building, they built the building around the equipment before they sealed it all up. So it's easy enough to cut equipment up and get it out the door, but how was I going to get the new equipment in the door? And they had wainscoting on the wall, and they had this wainscoting on the lower half of the wall, and then with paneling. And the top half had this red velvet wallpaper that felt like velvet cloth. And I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, I'll never be able to pull the door out and put it back in and make that look good, right? And this is the officers club. So I talked to a lot of people, what should I do? What can I do? And they all give me this same guy, Ron. Call Ron. He's like a furniture doctor. He's a master carpenter, but he can make anything, take it apart, put it back together, and you'll never know it was done. So I called the guy, and he wants $100 an hour. Now, over my career, this has happened several times. People want to work by the hour. So I've developed these techniques, these scripts on how to handle people that want to work by the hour. Now, you've got 25 years experience in the construction, right? So you started doing the federal work a couple of years ago.
Yeah, about 3 years ago.
Okay. And if you had been here 3 years ago, what do you think the difference would have been the last 3 years?
Oh, it would have been, well, probably made a lot more money than
Hundreds of thousands of dollars?
More successful than what we've been.
So not having this training literally costs over $100,000.
Over 100, and it's just a mind changer, the way the game is played.
Now, you've been in construction for how many years? You told me 13 years, okay. How much of what you saw here the last couple of days, 3 days, was new and different, percentage-wise?
95%.
95%. The guys that were at the IRC summit that aren't aware of this, but they're the guys that signed up and the guys that didn't sign up, what would you tell them about your last 2.5 days here?
Just a complete paradigm shift. I'd always heard about government work, heard pros and cons, heard it's difficult to get into, heard it's more of a headache than, there's more of a pain associated with it than there is pleasure. You can find somebody like yourself to lock arms with, and have you lead me through the jungle, so to speak. That the return on the amount of time invested, the amount of resources invested, the amount of money invested in the government realm is exponentially greater than what I'm doing right now in the storm restoration realm.
Mm-hmm. Now, right after you signed up, I mean, I think it was, we talked when they say, hey, I really want to come, here's my credit card number, and I started getting phone calls. You guys were having problems, right?
5 minutes after we sent you the deposit, we started calling you, and you started helping us out immediately with two projects that we had ongoing that were headed towards a problem, but we were able to
turn those around.
And,
real fast.
Yeah, real quick.
Okay, so you found us to be real responsive.
Absolutely. And there's really nobody out there teaching this. And there might be, but I'm thoroughly impressed with the course. I have no hesitation to recommend. Well, I don't know if I want to recommend.
You almost feel like if too many people knew this, that would make it more competitive. Okay. How would you compare the investment amount compared to the value? In other words, if it's worth what you paid for it, that'd be 1 to 1. If it's worth 10 times more, it'd be 10 to 1. What would you say that the value of this was compared to the investment?
Oh gosh, I don't know how to put a value on it. How do you put a value on something that you could potentially make, millions of dollars in, 100, 1,000 to 1?
If you want to do federal work, you need to make this investment, and it'll pay off. It's on your first contract, on your first change order, you'll make it up.